Good morning, everyone, and welcome back into the Daniel Saul Show, where your passion meets the truth. In today's episode, I'm going to be discussing boxing, specifically Terence "Bud" Crawford, and my reaction to his latest fight against Israel Madrimov. Okay, it's his first fight at 154. I'm going to give you my analysis and breakdown of the fight, how I think he did, how I think Israel did, and all that stuff. And on top of that, before the video continues and gets any further, let me quickly remind you to go down in the description, check out the links to my socials. Go follow them, because you'll see clips and highlights from the show if you miss any action here on YouTube. Let's get into it. First and foremost, I want to give a congratulations to Terence "Bud" Crawford on his tremendous win against Israel Madrimov this past Saturday. The fight was very electric. It was a tad bit boring at times, but overall it was a chess match, and it was somewhat interesting to watch. And I'm going to give you a breakdown and my analysis on the fight and all that extra stuff. So, firstly, Terence "Bud" Crawford is now a 4-division world champion. He was a world champion at lightweight. He was a world champion at super lightweight, and was actually undisputed at super lightweight. He also was undisputed as a welterweight at 147. So, let me just say that this fight, when it started, I was like, okay, Terence "Bud" Crawford is going to collect this data, and in the next 3 or 4 rounds, he's going to catch him, and then he's going to get him out of there. Was I wrong? I was absolutely wrong. Because the first 3 rounds of every boxing match is normally trying to figure each other out, see if you can collect some data. Just like what Floyd Mayweather was famous, and Canelo, what they're famous for doing, collecting data, being smart, and then figuring you out and then catching you in the later rounds. Now, what I thought was going to happen was I thought that he was going to be able to catch him after those first 3 rounds. But the first 3 rounds were horrible. The first 3 rounds, Madrimov was dancing around like I had ever seen before. I had never seen movement like Madrimov was performing and what he was putting on to display in the ring. Now, Crawford was moving a little bit, trying to, match his energy, but not that crazy. I mean, this guy was moving his hands around like I had never seen somebody's moving their arms like that before in a boxing match. So it was definitely confusing, and it was very difficult for Terence Crawford to figure his timing out and all that extra stuff. So normally, those great fighters collect data in the first 3 rounds, and then later on the rounds they catch him, or they end up picking them apart and then going the distance, winning unanimously. However, that's not the case in this fight, and that's not what transpired. So, like I said, the first 3 rounds were kind of weird for Madrimov, and I felt like Crawford won those 3 rounds just because he threw a lot of punches. Madrimov didn't really throw any punches throughout the fight in the first 3 rounds, so I would have to say that Crawford won the first 3 rounds just off of, output. Even though a lot of them probably hit the glove, he was the one, I guess, throwing punches, So, I mean, if you're throwing punches and the other guy's just dancing, how could you say that you win the round, So that's what I feel like is the case with the first 3 rounds. Now, from rounds 4 to 6, it was pretty close. I mean, I give Crawford the edge out of 2 of those 3 rounds. And I would just say that, at that point, I thought it was 5-1. And Crawford was winning, pretty easily. But it was definitely difficult. And he wasn't performing at the level that I thought he would perform at. So then after that, round 7 through 10, okay, those 4 rounds, Madrimov picked apart Terence "Bud" Crawford. He was hitting Crawford with shot after shot, straight rights. He was connecting with everything. He showed Crawford his power. It was something that Crawford had never felt before, and that's something that you have to look at. And when I was watching this fight and when I was seeing round 7 through 10, and I was like, God, he's getting picked apart. What is happening? Right? And at that point, it was almost tied because I felt like Madrimov won 4 rounds in a row, and it was like, okay, it's 5-5 now. You know, what's going on? And you could start to see Terence Bud Crawford kind of backing up and not going towards him. Like, he was hitting Madrimov with some counter punches, but it was nothing like what he was hitting Errol Spence with. Now, yet again, he was moving up in weight, so it wasn't going to be the same. 7 pounds is not that big of a difference. It is. There's weight classes for a reason. They say that for a reason, and it showed in the fight on Saturday. So Crawford definitely seemed a little stunned by the power. Way more power than he has ever faced before. I don't want to hear any type of excuses from Crawford or saying that that's not true, because it showed, right? It showed. You could easily tell that Terence Bud Crawford was getting hit by punches that he had never felt before. So he was backing up, and he looked a little scared at times. He was scared to throw a counter punch, and when he did, you could see he was kind of like a little twitchy with it because he wanted to hurry up and get his hands back to his face so he didn't get caught with a counter and all that extra stuff. Now, obviously, the weight difference played a factor, like I just got done saying. And so because of that, Madrimov saw it. He saw what Terence Crawford was displaying. He saw the fear factor, and then he was like, I'm going to go get him. So he basically won 4 rounds in a row, and then it was the championship rounds, who was going to win. And to me, I felt like Terence Crawford got angry, okay? It almost seemed like he was in desperation mode, okay? He was in desperation. He was desperate. He needed to get those last 2 rounds because it was tied up at that point. It was 5-5 when I look at it, and I was like, if Terence Crawford does not win these 2 rounds, he's going to either get a draw or he's going to lose, and that's not going to look good. So Terence Crawford went in there. He looked like he was in desperation mode, and then he looked angry. And when he was throwing punches, ladies and gentlemen, he was hitting them hard. He gave it all he had. He was accurate, right? Those last 2 rounds, he was accurate. He was powerful, and he was hitting shots that he hadn't hit all night and shots that we hadn't seen since the Errol Spence fight. And because he performed so well in those last 2 rounds, that's what gave him the fight. His problem was with his timing. His timing was off. He realized that Madrimov was very difficult to understand and difficult to process. He couldn't really collect data with a guy that was just running and dancing and then not throwing any punches. So it was kind of hard for Crawford to collect data and pick him apart. But the opposite happened. Crawford stood there, and then Madrimov picked him apart. But my point to you is Terence Crawford did not look the same since he last fought. He looked a lot different. He looked like a completely different fighter. He was way, way less accurate, and he just didn't seem like he had that killer in him. And I don't know what it could be. I truly believe that it was because of the differences in styles of Madrimov versus Spence. Spence was a lot more in your face and standing still, not much head movement, not much good footwork. His hands were close to his face. You know, he had a good guard. Madrimov was a lot of movement, and that's kind of difficult to read when you're boxing. So my point to you is that it was difficult, so his timing was off. He wasn't really catching him with a lot of shots. He was fast, but the timing was just not there. And so because the timing wasn't there, and because Terence Crawford's moving up in weight, his power is not, strong enough to knock out a guy at that weight yet. And on top of that, he hasn't gotten hit with a shot like Madrimov's power. So when he got hit with Madrimov's shots, you could see it on the replays. His face got beat up, and you could see that it was a hard punch. And he was sticking his tongue out. He was getting angry. So it was most definitely the hardest punches that he was ever hit by. So I felt like he was stunned. He was scared to push in a little bit. He was scared to get into a rhythm and try and attack Madrimov until the last 2 rounds, because like I said, he probably felt like he had to win the fight, and that's exactly what it was. He had to win in those last 2 rounds so he can get the edge over Madrimov. Terence Crawford did unanimously win, but it was very close. He won not really convincingly. But he did win, and I thought it was 7-5, so I thought it was a close fight. But overall, I mean, Terence Crawford, you got to be better than that, man. You got to be better than that. I mean, I expected a lot more from you, especially from what I saw from Spence, what you did to Spence, and I just had a lot more expectations for you. And overall, that's just really sad to me. I thought you were going to do a lot better than that, but that's all I got to say with this. Wait, hold up. Before this video ends, make sure you go like, turn on post notifications on as always, and comment. Let me know what you think about this video, and if you want to see more greatness and more amazing takes from me, Daniel Sauls, make sure you go subscribe to my channel. And go follow my other socials down in the description. Check them out. You'll see highlights and little clips from the show if you can't get all of the action from the 10 minutes or however long the video is. Make sure you go check that out, because I'll be back with more videos and more clips on the Daniel Sauls Show. Peace out, y'all.